Hi, everybody. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Moiya McTier, and I really want to speak to her because her background is a little interesting. I mean, she's pursuing a PhD in astronomy. I don't really meet too many people that are doing that, so I'm really interested to hear more about how she got into that, and also how public speaking kind of figures into her work in pursuing her PhD, and maybe even outside of that too. So thank you for being here, and thanks. Welcome to Teach the Geek Interviews, Moiya.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, you're pursuing a PhD in astronomy, but obviously before the PhD, you had to do a bachelor's. So was that in astronomy as well?
I actually double majored in astronomy and folklore in college.
Oh, wow. So what made you decide to combine those two?
Chance. I made very few conscious decisions in college. I just kind of went with the flow. I got to college thinking I maybe wanted to study physics, but had a really bad experience in my first physics class. And then I lived right across the street from the folklore building, so I went to one of their events and absolutely fell in love. But my mom really didn't want me to study a humanities field. She wanted me to be a scientist. And so I declared folklore anyway, but she encouraged me to try another science. And then I, by chance, got dragged to an introductory astronomy course by one of my friends, and the professor said we'd get free pizza every week, so I signed up.
I did it for you, huh?
I wasn't that interested in astronomy, but I knew that I loved pizza. So
yeah.
and then I refused to give either of them up. So I finagled my way into this weird double major that had never been done before. And the rest is history, I guess. The moral of the story is that you should always offer food to young people if you want them to choose.
Yeah, especially if they're in starving college student, that definitely can sway you. Either way. That's hilarious. So I always thought that physics and astronomy were related. They're not?
I mean, they are, but different schools have their departments structured differently. So I went to Harvard for undergrad, and the astronomy or the astrophysics department and the physics department are very separate. They're actually on almost opposite ends of the campus, and they don't really interact with each other. Here at Columbia, where I'm getting my PhD, the departments are separate, but they're in the same building. And so there's a little bit more communication between the two departments. But it really just depends on how the school structures it. Sometimes astronomy is within a physics department, but I've never been at a school like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. That's what I knew every day. You mentioned that your mother wanted you to pursue a STEM field. Is there a reason why?
Yeah, she, when I was growing up, was an adjunct English professor, and so she made no money. I actually make more money now as a grad student than my mom did when I was growing up, and she didn't have many job prospects because there aren't a lot of positions for English professors. So she wanted me to have more stability than she did.
Yeah, I watched a video, I think a YouTube video a number of months ago about adjuncts and how difficult it is to be an adjunct. I remember one of the people that were interviewed, they were adjuncting at a number of schools, and even then they still qualified for food stamps. It was crazy when I heard
it's horrible. It's a horrible system.
Yeah. I was like, man, you went through all that effort and time to get a PhD, and you can't make a livable wage. That's nuts.
Yeah.
And another thing that I realized is, well, at least maybe you can answer this question. So you're pursuing your PhD in astronomy. Is your intention when you're done to stick in academia, or do you want to leave faculty and do something else?
I'm planning on leaving. So I will graduate in about a year. That's when I'll defend my PhD dissertation. And I'm planning on pursuing science communication full time in a media context. I like speaking and some writing, but mostly speaking.
Interesting. Was that always the plan, or did that happen recently?
That has evolved. So I found astronomy as a sophomore in college, and that same summer I did a research internship at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, and they have a dedicated outreach office. So they have people whose full-time job is to do press releases or engage the public in astronomy topics. And I met with the people who work in that office and thought it was really cool. So when I was applying to grad schools, I thought maybe after I graduate, I'll get a job at some research facility that is half research and half outreach. And then sometime, I think as I moved through grad school, I realized that I am less and less interested in the research side of things and more interested in the communication and outreach side of things.
Oh, wow. So now that you're a year away from graduating, is it difficult to focus on that research when your goal is to do science communication full time?
Oh, yeah. You've just like reached into my soul. Yeah. Sorry. That's my cat. I have a really hard time staying motivated to do the research because I know what I want my life to look like after I graduate. I know I want to be doing speaking engagements full time and writing a lot. And that's just totally at odds with the life that I'm living now. But for me, I'm going to say this, and it might sound harsh, but to me, getting the PhD is kind of like a means to an end. I see it as a job. It's, to me, a 9-to-5 job, and when I finish it, I'll be able to have the job that I actually want.
Interesting. So you think, I guess, you're only a year away. It would be a shame to stop now. I'm sure your brother would disapprove. But I'm also thinking, even to work the job that you want to have, you think having a PhD would be of benefit?
I do. I really do. At the end of the day, I know that when I walk into rooms, I'm going to be a young-looking Black woman, and people are already going to have a hard time taking me seriously. People in the past have had a hard time taking me seriously, and the more credential I can have behind my name, the PhD will definitely help give me some cred that I'll need.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I would think so.
Also, I'm building skills in my PhD program that will help me in my science communication career. If I want to teach people how to think like a scientist, then I have to make sure that I myself know how to think like a scientist. So.
Yeah, I guess that's definitely a way to look at it. I don't know if I actually asked this, but what was your motivation to get a PhD in the first place?
When I was a senior in college, I wasn't done learning. I had done a lot of different research projects, and I still had questions that I wanted to answer. So I was particularly interested in the question of galactic habitability, the idea that there might be some parts of the galaxy that are more likely to host habitable planets than others. And no one, to my knowledge at the time, had answered that question sufficiently. I just didn't find the current literature acceptable. So I wanted to either find the answer or make the answer on my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess a question I have also about, pursuing a PhD, typically the professors that you would be working under, their goal is to get their students ready to be academics like they are. And but the idea of them becoming science communication, I get the sense is kind of like an afterthought. It's just kind of something we have to do if we want to, get grant money or something like that. Maybe it's a kind of a throw-in. Is the advisor that you have or your advisory team, are they behind you and what you want to do, post PhD?
They are. I'm actually really lucky in that regard. I came to Columbia because I knew that they had a really rich history of outreach. They do public lectures twice a month. They have projects or programs where they pair graduate students with high school classrooms, or every few weeks, graduate students will take telescopes out onto the sidewalk and get passersby interested in space. My advisor is David Kipping, who studies exomoons, moons around planets outside of our solar system, and he has his own YouTube channel. So he is really passionate about outreach, and he knew when I was applying that I was interested in outreach, although at the time I didn't want it to be my full-time thing. But as I have come to this realization myself, I've shared that with him. I think that honesty and transparency are really important, and so I have been really honest and transparent with him about my intentions.
Well, that's good to know, because it very well could have went south. You tell them, okay, I want to do science communication, and you go, this person's not even serious about the research, so I'm not going to spend as much time with them, helping them to get to their goal, because their goal doesn't really help me much. But that's good that you have a more forward-thinking professor, especially since people that are graduating from PhDs has a surplus, and there's not enough jobs to support them in academics anyway, so they have to find something to do. And
Exactly.
It might as well be science communication. So when you're done, you become a science communicator full time. What would that look like? Is that you working for somebody? Is that you working as a freelancer?
That's a really great question. I have been struggling lately because I know I'm graduating in about a year, but I don't know exactly what I'll be doing after that. My dream is to have my own science comedy TV show. But the thing about that is that you don't work up to having your own science comedy TV show. I mean, you make connections and you make relationships with people, but you either have the TV show or you don't. There's not a pipeline like the postdoc to assistant professor to tenure professor track. That's not a thing in media. And so I think in the meantime, I'll probably do a lot of live shows, which luckily I live in New York, and there are a lot of opportunities for that. So I'll do live shows. I'll do live speaking engagements like workshops and seminars, and try and build enough of a presence to get my own show. Maybe writing. I'll do some writing as well. So yeah, I think that's probably technically freelancing.
Yeah. What would that science comedy TV show look like?
Yeah, I have a few friends who work in comedy right now. They work on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, and they have been pitching me the idea of a show that's almost exactly like a late night news show. It has celebrity appearances, and there are sketches, and there are field segments, but instead of politics news, it's all science news.
Oh, yeah, that sounds pretty good. That might be a show I'd watch.
Exactly. And science comedy is a rising thing now, especially in places like New York and DC. There are scientists who train as comedians, and vice versa. So.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Okay, yeah. I never really thought to put the two together, since science can often be rather dry. But making it funny, maybe that helps to engage others so they actually listen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And hopefully they retain it too, because you don't want to just be laughing and then they leave and then it's like, what did I hear again? All right, that's pretty interesting. So I know you said that you'll probably do you'll be doing speaking engagement workshops, seminars, that type of thing. What were the speaking topics do you think that you would do?
Yeah, well, I'm always happy to talk about astronomy. Mostly, though, I like teaching people how to think like a scientist, how to solve their everyday problems using the scientific method. So these are workshops that I've been doing for the last 2 years. I've worked with an education startup, a museum startup, a business consulting firm, and I have gone in and given workshops for how to use different skills that scientists use every day, things like dimensional analysis or order of magnitude estimation or planning under constraints. I mean, if you think about planning an astronomical observation, there are a lot of constraints that you have to work with, and that's a skill. And so I'm teaching other people those skills. I'm also I have this weird background in folklore and astronomy, which combines science and art creativity. And I am really passionate about teaching other people how to bridge the gap between art and science, letting science inspire their own creative projects. So I teach people how to do that.
So you're into STEAM then, not just STEM.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. When it comes to public speaking, is that something you've always been good at? And if not, what have you done to get better at it?
Oh God, no. I remember, I think I was like maybe a junior in college, and I was taking this class where we had to give a speech in front of the class almost every week. And I was a really good student in high school, and so I didn't hate it, and I wasn't necessarily afraid because I knew that I would do as well or better than other people in my class. But I was not comfortable with public speaking. And what I would do was I would write out the speech, and then I would record myself reading the speech with like all of the right tones and inflections and pauses, like exactly how I would want to deliver it. And then I would just listen to that recording over and over again, like while I was sleeping, while I was on the bus, while I was walking everywhere. And then when I gave the speech, I would just do it from memory, from that recording. And I remember the first time I ever gave a talk that wasn't straight from memory was when I was presenting my senior project in high school. And because I just knew the project so well, I didn't have to do all of that prep work ahead of time. And now I realize that when you're talking about topics that you actually care about and that you know really well, it's much more comfortable. And so for me, the trick has just been refusing to talk about things that I'm not interested in.
I'm laughing because that's something that I address in that course I talked about in the intro, Teach the Geek to Speak. It's really important to talk about things that you actually give a shit about, because it's hard. It's so hard, at least for me. As I'm a very introverted person, so if I get up in front of people, I really need to know what I'm talking about. I really need to believe in it. It's really difficult for myself to talk about things that I don't agree with. I struggle. It's bad. I never prepare too much for even these type of interviews, because I'm interested in the work that people like you do. So it doesn't require me to, get together or to formulate things beforehand and kind of psych myself up for it. And I'm never really all that nervous doing this, because it's just me having a conversation. And man, I hark on this in the course, really. It's really, so you're absolutely on point. It's really good, or a good idea to speak about things you actually care about.
Yeah, definitely.
So when it also comes to public speaking, do you have a process for putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
I'm developing more of a process now. I have realized recently that my process isn't typical. I don't practice my talks in front of people, or really to myself. I will mentally think about how I want to transition between points, and I'll plan out the outline of the talk. So my process these days is that I will spend a lot of time thinking about what I want to say in the talk. Like I start from the takeaway points that I want the audience to get, and then I build out the outline of the talk, making sure that I hit those points. Like everything is in service of those key takeaways. And then if I have slides, I will go through and put in the titles of each slide first. And then I'll put in the pictures that I want. And then the last thing I do is the animations. And in doing it that way, because I know exactly what I want the audience to get away from it, that is my way of planning what I want to say. I no longer write out word for word what I'm going to say, unless I don't have slides. Like if it's a monologue, then I will write out more detailed bullet points that aren't like word for word what I want to say, but they are much more detailed than the slide outline.
Yeah, okay, so you kind of work backwards. You think about what the takeaway is, and then you kind of fill everything out just based on what those takeaways are. That's actually a smart way of going about it. And when it comes to slides, I'm with you. I'm a big fan of pictures. You would know this. You're a PhD student, so I'm guessing you attend a lot of conferences. I used to work in medical devices as an engineer. I had to attend conferences every now and then. And if I was sleepy, going to a conference talk is not the place to be, because you will definitely fall asleep most of the time. People are presenting are people. Well, I wouldn't say people like you, but people like you in the sense that they're academics, they're PhD students, or they're postdocs, maybe professors. If you're a PhD student or a postdoc, you're doing it because your professor told you to, not really because you really wanted to be there. So you're in front of the people. You don't really want to be there. You don't really care about engaging an audience or anything like that. You just want to get through the presentation and get off the stage as quickly as possible. So what you tend to do is you'll read the slides. And when you read the slides, you're not really engaging anybody. And it's difficult to engage somebody when you're not looking at them. And you can't look at them if you're reading the slides. And so if you go in there, hoping to learn something, if you're an audience member, maybe you will. Chances are you're just probably going to nod off and then wake up, and then the thing's over, and then you got to go on to wherever else you were going to go. But a great way to engage people, in my opinion, is pictures. And you even mentioned animations. That's even better. That's kicking it up a notch you know. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I try to minimize the text because if people are reading them, they're not listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have really great ideas when it comes to putting presentations together. I'm glad that someone at your level, you know, a PhD student would even think to do something like that, because a lot of times they don't really care.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do with my life. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, science comedy, you got to engage people, I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to public speaking, what are the most important tips you could offer somebody who wants to get better at it?
That is a great question. I think that people try and tackle too much stuff in when they approach public speaking. They think that they have to get rid of their verbal tics. They have to get rid of their ums and ahs and so's. They think that they have to maintain eye contact, that they have to have good flow in the speech. There are so many things that are necessary to have a good talk, and people think they have to do all of them at once, which is so hard if you're just getting started in public speaking. And so my tip would be to focus on one thing at a time. When I was getting really serious about doing science communication full time, I identified my problem areas, and then I only focused on one of them per talk. And so, or per few talks. And so I remember there was a month where I was focusing on getting rid of my verbal tics. And then there was a month when I was focusing on not making weird faces on stage, because every single time someone took a picture of me while I was talking, I was making just the most ridiculous face. And then there was a month where I was focusing on like really engaging the audience and holding the audience in my palms, making sure that I was a good host on stage. And so I only focused on one of those things at a time, and that let me build the skills in an easier way. It was much easier to digest all of what was happening if I was only focusing on one thing.
You know, that's excellent advice, Moiya. And I was actually a member of Toastmasters for a number of years. Have you ever heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I was a member for a number of years. And in Toastmasters, one of the sections, I guess the parts of the meeting is prepared speeches. And then after that is the evaluation. So when you give a prepared speech, you have an evaluator that's assigned to your speech. And they'll give you, obviously, they'll evaluate you and give you feedback. But in addition to that, the other people that are at the Toastmasters meeting, they can evaluate you too. So they get a sheet of papers, and they can write down any notes and provide them to you as well. And I'm a big fan of constructive criticism, you know, getting that kind of feedback. That's the only way really to get better at, well, at public speaking or anything really. But when it comes to feedback, it's really important to note that you don't accept all feedback. You only accept the feedback that you think is useful. And your idea of focusing on one thing at a time, I think, is a great idea. So you don't get overwhelmed by all the feedback that you get. So you mentioned it, you know, verbal tics, you know, weird faces, engaging the audience, all those things. I mean, if you were trying to improve on all those things all at the same time, you might get overwhelmed and just not do any of them. What do they call it? Like analysis by paralysis, something like that. Yeah. So I firmly agree with you. And not only that, I remember when I was a Toastmaster, oftentimes I get feedback that was contradictory. So one person would say, you have great eye contact. Another person would say, improve your eye contact, you know? So,
yeah, people have different tastes.
Yeah. And, you know, you're not trying to be all things to all people, because if that's your goal, then you're going to fail every time. You're trying to appeal to as many people as possible, but just not everybody, because as you said, everyone has their tastes. You're absolutely right. So is there anything else that you'd like people to know about the things that you're working on?
I don't know. I have a lot of projects going on. I you know, am getting a PhD, but I am doing, I'm hosting my own show at a space called Caveat in New York City. I am doing a lot of freelance writing. I'm working on a book proposal. I'm giving regular workshops and seminars for different astronomy groups and school groups around the city. I want people who are getting started with public speaking to know that there are people out there who look like they're doing a lot, and it's just because they have been doing it for longer. I want to make sure that people like don't look at me and think that I am like a super woman who doesn't sleep. I sleep a lot. I've just, over time, you get more efficient at things, and people might not realize that when they're first getting started. They might be trying to look towards the future, and it seems nebulous and impossible, but things will get easier. You'll get better at things. You'll get faster at things. So that's what I want to leave people with.
Oh yeah, for sure. You gotta crawl before you walk, and you gotta walk before you run. Absolutely, yeah. That's kind of the natural way of things. So absolutely, you're right. You're absolutely right. So how can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram or Twitter. My handle's GoAstroMo, and my website is moiamctier.com.
Excellent. All right. Go Astromo on Instagram and Twitter, and Moiya McTier. I'll put that in the notes, of course. So everybody, that marks the end of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care. Thanks, Moiya.
Thank you.